I see my husband snuck in. I'm going to point right to him. That's my husband right there in the blue jacket. Hi, John Axne. How are you, John? Didn't get to say hi this morning, so it's good to see you now. Listen, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. We just came back from Dallas County, where we were touring one of our critical access hospitals there. Prior to that, I'd been out to Winterset as well as Creston, holding Connect with Your Congresswoman in Creston. And now I'm here tonight holding our 61st Town Hall / Connect with Your Congresswoman to make sure that I'm listening to the people here in the district. So, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. I know everybody is quite busy. We've got a lot going on in our state, not just with your individual selves and your families, but with also, of course, everything happening around the presidential election. So I thank you for taking the time to come out and connect with your Congresswoman, because I'm here to serve you and to make sure that your ideas go back to Washington with me so that I can work on policy that helps improve the lives of you, your neighbors, and your family. For those of you who don't know me very well, I did go to school here at Valley. My two boys go here right now. I'm a fifth-generation Iowan, originally from the south side of Des Moines, but moved over to West Des Moines when I was growing up, a little bit in my later years. I spent a decade in state government, working under Governor Vilsack, Governor Culver's, and Governor Branstad's administration, really holding government accountable to doing what's right for the people in the state, whether it was helping them find the right strategies to reach the outcomes that we needed to do to give better services to the people here, or running things like the Energy and Environment Plan, helping to make Iowa #2 in wind production in the country. And I try to do whatever I can in our community to make sure that it's benefiting the people that live here. So fighting for all-day kindergarten in West Des Moines, helping to stop construction through Walnut Woods Park for an unnecessary new road. And I'm taking that fighting spirit that I've got from growing up in Iowa with my parents and my two sisters, and the sense of community that they instilled in me, and taking that hard-working ethic that we all have here out to Washington and working on policy to hopefully help the people here in our state. And I'd like everybody here to know, whether you're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, I'm here to serve you, and I truly mean that. We might not always agree on everything, but your best opportunities in life for you and your children mean a lot to me, and I'll fight tooth and nail to make sure that Iowans get what they need. As I mentioned, I just finished up Connect with Your Congresswoman in Creston, and I'm here today at my 61st Town Hall. I'm proud to let you all know that last year I was named the most accessible freshman member of Congress by the Town Hall Project. Everybody says, well, that's fantastic. You're getting out there and you're showing the people that you can get out and about. I say, well, listen, there's so much benefit for me to go out and visit with people in our community, because the best ideas come from the people who live here. When I'm visiting folks, whether I'm doing a rural healthcare tour or I'm going out and talking with small business owners, the way that I find out about what we need to get done in Washington is by talking with those folks. So I come out of those meetings not just understanding what the problems we're facing, but truly, honestly, the solutions. Because the solutions come from people like you who know the issues that you're facing. I'm somebody who can help bring that to a level where we can actually change the issues that are affecting you. So I'm grateful for your input, and I will continue to be accessible, because you don't just deserve it, we need it to change the trajectory of what's happening out in Washington. So I want to give you a little update on some of the things that we finished the year up with, and then a few of the things that we started this year up with out in Washington. Hopefully you saw that we passed out of the House towards the end of last year H.R. 3, a big prescription drug bill. It's now sitting in the Senate. We hope that it gets taken up for traction, because, folks, this is going to save everybody sitting here and every person around this country a heck of a lot of money. In this agreement, so H.R. 3, the Elijah Cummings prescription drug bill, it will allow us to negotiate the most expensive and most used drugs within Medicare. The 254 of those, I believe, most expensive drugs. We're going to take 35 of those every single year for the next 7 years until we get through that list. In the first year, we'll include insulin. those prices that we're able to negotiate will be extended out to every American. So you don't have to be on Medicare. Every American will be able to get those lower priced drugs. The second thing that it does is it caps out-of-pocket expenses for folks on Medicare with your prescription drugs at $2,000. Now, I'd love to see it even a little bit lower, but we all know that there are folks who are paying $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 out of pocket right now, and they just can't absorb that. So this is a move in the right direction. And the third key piece that it does is it ensures that Americans pay no more than 20% over any other country for the drugs that we produce and sell here. I would like to see that. We don't pay any more, but this is, again, a step in the right direction. Now, the best part of this, though, is the fact where the savings go. For those of you who are on Medicare, we're going to now increase that so that it covers vision, dental, and hearing coverage. And I think that's fantastic. So I like the sound of that. And by the way, the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan, basically they just crunch numbers department to see how expensive bills are going to be and can this country afford them, came out and said this will save our country somewhere between $350 billion and $700 billion. And that's how we're able to afford those programs. Additional savings will go into how we can solve rare diseases. It will increase funding for the National Institute of Health and make sure that we're addressing some of the issues that we're facing from a disease perspective and finding better solutions and cures for those. So it's a great bill. I hope you all will get behind it and maybe encourage our senators to ask that to be brought to the floor so that we can lower the cost of prescription drugs for every single person in this country. So that's one of the key things that we worked on. The other big piece that I'd like to mention is we finally got USMCA through the House. I'm excited that that happened. We needed to create some market stability for our agriculture community here in Iowa. We worked on that steadily from the time the House got it at the beginning of July to shore up some of the issues that weren't covered within the agreement that came over from the administration. I'm really glad to see that we ended up with a great product. And I'm really glad to see that the President decided to look into a trade agreement and make it better for the people here in our country. I think it's important that we look at any trade agreement, open it up, and make sure that it's working for the people that live here. And that's what he decided to do, and I commend him for doing that. When it came over to the House, it was missing some key provisions that protect labor and environment. And so we wanted to make sure that those were included. Because if you can remember, with NAFTA, we didn't have good labor provisions within it. And what that meant was Americans lost out. We lost jobs, and they were sent to Mexico and other places, and we lost an opportunity to provide good-paying jobs to people here in this country. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure happened is that we would have good labor regulations and good environmental regulations in that Mexico had to abide with as well. Because we always want to make sure that American workers succeed. And if we don't hold our trade partners up to the same parameters that we follow, they will always undercut our pricing, and that means that we will pay our employees less here, and we won't be able to sell the goods at the prices that we'd like to see them sold at. So we needed to make sure that this happened. I was proud to be one of the people that the speaker brought in to specifically speak with President Trumka from the AFL-CIO and let him know how important it was to get USMCA passed as quickly as possible. And when the speaker saw that we were coming backwards a little bit towards the end of the year and not possibly being able to move this agenda forward, she called in me and Abby Finkenauer and asked us to speak with the head of the AFL-CIO and let him know how important it is. We understand we want to get these labor provisions worked out, but we absolutely need to get this done quickly because our agriculture community needs it. So I was really happy to see that go through and it go through the Senate as well, and President Trump should be signing that into law, I believe, next week. So that was another big situation. I've got a little bit of sinus here, so let me take a drink of water. Those are a couple of the key bills that we were able to get through towards the end of the year. And I do want to let you know I had an amendment that I was able to get into H.R. 3, the prescription drug bill, that will eliminate the red tape and the paperwork that you and your doctors have to go through when you're in the doctor's office. When you're going in, either for yourself or you're taking your child in, you don't want to spend all your time sitting there doing paperwork, and you don't want to go into the doctor's office and then the doctor has to spend all of his time on the computer instead of looking at you and working with you and talking with you. We want to take that out of the system and make sure that you get the attention that you need. So I was able to get an amendment into that bill that will streamline that process. It's a grants program that will allow us to design the best practice, and then we'll be pushing that best practice out across the country so that all doctors can be able to utilize a system that's much better for you as a patient and them as a provider to spend more time with you and less time on the computer. So I was happy to see that go through. And one of the things I'm really proud about was that, along with every other bill amendment I had last year, was passed by a voice vote. What that means, folks, is that both Democrats and Republicans thought it was a good idea, and nobody objected to it. And I was the only freshman member of Congress that got my amendments passed through the entire year on just a voice vote. I call that Iowa pragmatism. And then this beginning of this year, I've been really focused on protecting Iowa workers. I know in the past we've seen some of our companies here outsource jobs. And I want to make sure that we're protecting jobs in our own community. So I've written a couple of bills to ensure that jobs stay in America, and definitely in our district and in Iowa. One of the things is called offshoring bill that I wrote. This ensures that companies who offshore jobs have to provide trade adjustment assistance timely for those folks who lost their jobs, which means they need to be truthful about, is this job being outsourced? There's a lot of ways that companies can get around not providing this assistance. Trade adjustment assistance reskills people and allows them to have an opportunity to find a new job if their job has been outsourced. And so we've got to make sure that companies hold themselves responsible and accountable to the people that they employ. And if they're going to take jobs out of America, that they're at least providing an opportunity for the people that have worked for them to live a life of dignity and have a transition into a new job that they can have an opportunity with from that point on. So that's one bill. The second bill that I wrote to help keep jobs in America would force public companies, publicly traded companies, so this isn't your small businesses, folks, these are publicly traded companies who have to have this information anyhow, to outline where their employees are located. Right now, that's not a requirement. And all this does is ask companies once a year to let us know where their employees are located in the States and where their employees are located in other countries. So Americans can see where the companies that we support and that do receive benefit from taxpayer dollars are putting their workers. Are they investing here in Iowa? Are they investing in the Midwest? Are they even investing in our country? Or are they allowing for more opportunity to save more money and put that back into their rich shareholders' pockets by outsourcing jobs that we need here? So we need to start holding some accountability to people who are employing people in this country and making sure that they pay people well and that we keep jobs here in America. So I've been really focused on addressing that issue. Along with affordable housing, you may have heard that we have a private equity firm called Haven Park Capital that unfortunately has decided they want to come into Iowa and purchase some of our modular housing communities or mobile home courts. We've got one out in Waukee, and we also have one in our district in Indianola. Unfortunately, this private equity firm came in and said, this land is worth more. We're going to come in, we're going to purchase it, and then we're going to jack up everybody's land rent prices by 70%. These are people who are on fixed incomes. These are people who are just on Social Security. They've spent their lifetime there. There are also families. There's families with little kids there. As part of the private equity's new rules, they told people they can't have dogs over a certain size. They've got to get rid of swing sets. Well, I don't think it's right to come into our community, jack up people's rents without an opportunity for them to have a say in it, tell them how they're supposed to run their lives, take away their animals and say you can't have this one here, and think that that's okay. So I'm working with folks at a federal level and at a state level to address this issue, to make sure that there's opportunity for people to actually engage in their own future and not have somebody decide how they're going to live. So I wrote a bill that allows them to get a grant where they could actually, a nonprofit could do this, the state could do the individuals who actually have properties within those modular housing communities could pool together and find some funding, and then they could go get a matching grant up to $1 million and help them actually purchase the land themselves. So I'm trying to find every way possible to make sure that people aren't taken advantage of and that they can actually live lives of dignity. And I'll protect Iowans every step of the way. So those are a few of the key bills that I've been working on. I'm continuing to work on a lot of healthcare issues, working on rural healthcare in particular. It's a situation that's very detrimental to our society if we're not able to keep critical access hospitals open in some of our communities. If they're not able to have the emergency services they need, we're going to see communities not be able to sufficiently serve their citizens from a healthcare perspective. So I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that we're addressing this issue. And I'm actually working with Senator Grassley on the Senate side to put forth a bill that will address rural healthcare issues across this country so that we can ensure that every single person in this great land of ours has access to affordable quality care in their own backyard. And those are a few things that I've been working on. The last thing I'll let you know, if you haven't been keeping up on it, we still have a lot of issues with flooding out in the western part of our district on the Missouri River. And we're going to see more flooding come this spring. We know it's going to happen. So I've been working on ways that not only can we shore up the resources and get the money to the folks who need it, but also how are we going to prevent some of the issues that we're seeing now and fix those down the road. I mentioned earlier that I spent a decade working in state government. I firmly believe that it's okay to put policy in place, but if you don't have the right structures and resources in place to support it, then you're going to create unintended outcomes. So when we look at policy, we better make darn sure that we're going to be able to implement it well and that we've got the opportunity, the resources, and the structure to push that out to the people who need it. Right now, that doesn't happen real well when it comes to disaster funding. And I fought tooth and nail to get $3 billion dedicated just to the Midwest for our flood issues when our disaster bill was going through. But I later found out that a lot of people aren't getting the money that they need. It's being held up in many different ways. And a lot of it is because of bureaucracy, government red tape. So I recently wrote a couple of bills. The first one was with Senator Ernst, allowing our towns to keep temporary levees that were put in place that protect their communities and not tear those down because it doesn't meet a certain criteria with the Corps of Engineers. Because if you haven't heard, folks, one of the reasons that one of our towns, Hamburg, which is very southwestern part of our district, flooded is because they had to take down a levee that would have protected the town because it didn't meet the criteria because it wasn't a permanent levee. They took it down, the town flooded. Now all of your taxpayer dollars we need to take so we can help fix that town again because of a law that said you can't keep something that's actually working good for you. So the senator and I decided we're going to take care of that, and we just wrote a bill on that, and we're going to move that agenda forward. And then I wrote a bill with Representative Green to address the bureaucratic issues within the different departments who deal with disaster recovery. One of them is HUD, Housing and Urban Development. And we are seeing delays in getting that funding out into our communities. So we wrote a bill to allow them more flexibility, not having to have so much of the requirements that they usually need up front, because it's real difficult to get the details that they need to give somebody a grant when they can't get in and really, get into the town and see what's happening because it's all flooded out. And they want to wait until water leaves. They have all these requirements that you have to go through. Well, you know what, folks? By that time, this is darn too late. And so we decided we're going to stop this madness. We're going to start forcing these departments who should be implementing the policy. They've got to do it in the right way, in a way that that the policy was intended. So we wrote a bill to address that, and I'm going to be writing a similar bill for FEMA, for the Small Business Administration, and the other organizations that work with us to make sure that down the road, should a disaster come to Iowa's doors again, that we're not going through so much red tape, and those who are in need and suffering get the funding that they need immediately. And I'm going to continue to work on issues like that I think are equally as important as policy. Because if we're not able to do what people need because government isn't functioning well, then we're not doing our jobs either. It's not right for me to just go out there and sit in a nice chamber and vote for a law when I know that it's never going to do what it needs to do. So I want to fight for those things that are behind the scenes to make sure that when we say we're going to do something, it actually happens. And I'll leave you with one last note. Just last week, in line with what I'm talking about here, cleaning up things that are going on in Congress, myself and 6 of my other colleagues established the End Corruption Caucus in Washington. So I'm really happy that we're going to be addressing it. I heard we've got a chicken caucus, we've got a vegan caucus, we've got a dog caucus, we've got a cigar caucus, and we said, why the heck don't we have a caucus to start crafting some policy to root out corruption in this place, for God's sake? So we decided that we're going to start that up. And as a matter of fact, one of the key people that did that with me is my good friend Katie Porter from California, who, by the way, is an Iowan. So, you know, you've got your Iowa gals out there cleaning up caucus. So we've got a heck of a lot more to work on, but I'm really glad to be back here visiting with all of you to hear about your concerns so I can take them out there with me. I will promise you this, I will always fight for you. As I said, we might not always be on the same page, but I'm looking out for this place. I'm looking out for this state that I care so deeply for. As a 5th-generation Iowan whose both parents grew up in farm families and then moved up to Des Moines, this place means so much to me, and I want everybody in this country to understand how important Iowa and states like our state is to our national economy, to our national security. And I will make sure that every step of the way, they know how valuable we are. Whether I'm telling folks in Detroit that they need to support rural broadband because every ball bearing for the Ford Explorer is made in our district, so they need our support. Or whether I'm telling folks who are really interested in helping us move the agenda forward on behavioral health issues that we need your help in getting rural broadband out here because that will help us eliminate a lot of the issues in getting folks to be consistent with seeing their doctor. So I'm trying to find every possible way for them to understand how important Iowa is and how integral it is to this country, not just to Iowa and the Midwest, but to the big companies that are located all over this country with all our small manufacturing here. So I'm going to stand up and fight for us. I'm going to be the voice of 10 representatives because when California's got 50, New York's got 40, I think Florida's getting close to 30 at this point, I've got to stand up and be loud and proud about Iowa. So just this past week, when I was leaving the chambers, I walked out of into the hallway with a representative of Ways and Means, the head of Ways and Means, Richie Neal. He deals with taxes, he deals with appropriations, budget, and all that stuff. And he said to me, I don't think any state made out better than Iowa in this year's appropriations. I'm going to tell you folks, that's not a statement that you usually hear in the halls out in Washington. Iowa doesn't get the attention it needed. But for the first time in 5 years, we got the biodiesel tax extender through, and we were able to make things like that happen for the state of Iowa. And as a matter of fact, when I saw Senator Grassley on a plane, I went up to him like, how about those biodiesel tax extenders, Senator? High-five me. And I don't think he knew what to do with that, but I think he entertained the plane a little bit. But he said to me, you know, I'm so glad we got that through. We worked hard on it. I've been pressuring the speaker on getting that done. And he said to me, you know, I want to let you know, it was really great working with the speaker to get this done for Iowa, and I'm grateful for the conversations and the opportunity we had to work on that agenda and move that forward. And I said, I really appreciate you saying that, Senator. As a matter of fact, before I left the chambers today and we came home, the speaker told me how she really thought your working relationship was great on this issue. So bipartisanship does exist, folks. It's still out there. I think the best examples can come from Iowa. If we have to teach the rest of this country how to be civil with each other, I think we're going to be able to make that happen. Thanks for being here, and I'd love to answer any questions.
Okay, our first question is from Mike, and it says, Iowa suffered $2 billion in damages from the floods of 2019. Most of that damage was in the 3rd District. Climate disaster has devastated Iowa farmers. What can be done in Congress to help farmers fight the climate crisis?
Mike, thank you so much for that question. And absolutely, you're so right. The flooding on the Missouri, we've had flooding on the Missouri River before. We've released the same amount of gallons out of Gavin's Point Dam, the last major reservoir up north, before we release water down the Missouri into the southern parts of our country and into the Gulf and you know, into the rest of the world. We've got big reservoirs, 5 of them up there. So we've released that much water before. We've had that much water coming out of our western tributaries because of rainfall and melting in the spring. But we've never seen a cyclone blizzard that hit last year and dumped tons of precipitation on the Great Plains and the Rockies. Once that all started to melt, and it melted into the Platte River, that came together at the same time, and that's why we saw such a terrible flooding this time. And that was because of climate change issues. And so our farmers are understanding this is absolutely impacting them. Now, I haven't been behind a few of the environmental plans that have come out, because I don't think that they're protecting Iowa and what we need here. So what I decided to do, Mike, was to go find Representative Tonko, who's the head of Energy and Commerce Committee, which is the granddaddy committee of them all. They deal with all the energy, they deal with healthcare, all this stuff. And I went to find Representative Tonko because I knew that they were working on a big climate bill that we'll be putting out most likely this year to move us towards the objective of a clean economy and renewable energy, net zero by 2050, etc. And I said, I'd like to talk to you because I'm very concerned that a lot of the environmental bills, the climate bills that are being presented aren't considering the opportunities for states like Iowa. And I think that I'd love to have a chance to talk with you about that. Then I started telling him about how I was able to serve and be able to help push the wind industry here, make us #2 in wind production, which he had no idea about. That I worked at the Department of Natural Resources, and this is, you know, listen, I try and compost in the middle of winter in Iowa. We all know how difficult that is. And let him know that the place where we should be addressing climate is right here in the Midwest. We've got the resources, we've got the land. And I said, you know, we need to be looking at policies. We need to be subsidizing and giving tax incentives for things like equipment that can capture carbon and sequester it. For crops, cover crops, but we also need infrastructure to support different types of crops here. I started telling him about how we've been structured so that really we just support soybeans and corn, and that's great. We need to sell those products. But the reason that we can't start putting in so many other additional crops here is because we've lost all of our processing opportunities because of the way we've structured agriculture. Our farmers would like to do a lot of different things, but they're not able to because they've also got to put food on their own table. And so sometimes they've got to do what's best for their family, which is essentially put in the crops that they can get coverage for, whether it's insurance coverage or a subsidy or whatever they need if that crop doesn't go well or there's a market decline. And so we've got a lot of things that need to be done to make sure states like Iowa can be a big player in this. But I think that it has to start with places like ours. We absolutely have the available resources here to turn manure and methane into energy for solar fields, for wind energy, and we absolutely should be expanding, clean biofuels. And so he was excited to have somebody that actually cares about this, and I was really pretty fired up on the floor saying we're being overlooked and our farmers need to be at the table. And he said, I want you to be a part of this discussion. So now I'm working with him on that, wherever you are, Mike. Thank you for that question, because nobody had been looking out for states like ours. I agree that we need to get to these big outcomes, but not at the expense of people's livelihoods. We can do this. We can be sustainable, and we can also continue to be a great agriculture state. But we need people at the table who understand that. So I'm anxious to work with our farmers, as I've been telling us about this, so that we do have a seat at the table, because I want Iowa to be the leader. I want it to be one of the biggest economic opportunities that we can have here, and I want to give our farmers and their children for years to come an opportunity to stay on those farms and know that they will have a viable business and an opportunity for their families.
Okay. Our next question is from Diana from Des Moines. She says, the president said that he was going to cut Social Security and Medicare. I am planning to retire this year. What can I do to stop this from happening?
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on your retirement. Listen, what you can do is keep electing people who want to protect Social Security and Medicare, and that's absolutely something that I stand by. Listen, those are hard-earned benefits that every single person deserves, and I've been there. I've seen folks who are living just on their Social Security. In no way, shape, or form can we be cutting that. There are folks who have to save up 8 weeks to buy a set of towels in our country because they have very little to live on. I spent time living in Chicago, married my husband. I lived there for a little bit with him, had my first son there. And when I was there, I volunteered for a group called Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly. And I volunteered, and I had a couple of friends throughout my time there. These are folks who had no family, who were living on Social Security. They could barely make ends meet. I know we have those folks all over Iowa too, because we have people like that across this entire country. And we cannot take away the opportunity for them to live a life of dignity in their senior years because they deserve it. So I will protect that tooth and nail, continue to support people who will do that, and we will make sure that it's there for you, because I want to make sure that it's there not just for you, but for me, for all of you out here, for our kids. This is a program that every single person in this country should be able to benefit from, and if we run it properly, we can make it solvent, and we can make sure that all of our folks here have a life of dignity when they retire.
Okay, our next question is from Nancy from West Des Moines. How can we as a state get better reimbursement for Medicare and Medicaid to our doctors and hospitals?
Yes. We're just fraught with issues when it comes to this. I literally just left the Dallas County Hospital in Perry. I've been to rural health clinics. I've been to health clinics here. I've been to hospitals all over the Des Moines metro area. Reimbursement rates are barely covering costs in many areas. So it's absolutely an issue that we need to address. There's so much coordination that needs to be done within our healthcare system to lower the cost of it across the board. And that's not going to be solved by just saying we're going to do this plan or that plan or the other thing. This is a lot of internal stuff that needs to be done as well. And so one of the things that I've done recently is craft a bill for our health clinics that are owned by hospitals. So this is what I'm talking about when it comes to these little nuances. Our healthcare clinics, if they're owned by a hospital, get reimbursed at 100% rate. If they're not owned by a hospital, let's say that they're privately owned, they get reimbursed at approximately 80% of that. So they can't even keep up with their cost. I think about a place out in Redfield. There's a clinic out in Redfield, and I walk in there, and the owner, Ed, is a terrific guy. He tries to serve that community, but you really feel like you walk back in time when you enter that space. Old linoleum, furniture that's from the 70s. He's doing everything he possibly can just to provide the services to the people in Guthrie County and make sure that they've got what they need. But he can't even get reimbursed at a rate that covers the cost of his expenses. And so we've got a lot of opportunity within our system to find those areas and fix them. I wrote a bill to do that to help those clinics, so that it doesn't matter who owns you, your cost is still the same. Right now, I just sent a letter to the state because some small business owners called me because there's a company here that wants to jack up the prices of medical devices, and that wants to reimburse them less for the cost of medical devices. And so what's going to happen is that's going to get pushed back on those medical device companies, and we need them to be able to sell those goods. These are things like nebulizers, and they say that they're going to reimburse them at 80% less. So they contacted my office because this is a lot of federal money too, as you all well know, with Medicaid. And they said, listen, what can you do about that? So I'm going to work with the state to ensure that another organization doesn't just come in and say, we've just decided that we're going to start reimbursing you for less, for no reason whatsoever. They have no reason to actually say that this is necessary. So I'm working with the state on that. But there's all these little nuances, like I said, that have to be fixed within the law, whether it's addressing clinics and how they're structured so that they can get reimbursed, or whether it's addressing providers who can really just determine what they want to do and then force it on the providers. And that's not right. So there's a lot of things that we can do. There's not one silver bullet for that. It's looking at different elements of how our healthcare is constructed in this country and then finding those opportunities to rewrite the policy that gives that full reimbursement to those providers. And I'm trying to find all those options, and it's one of the reasons why I go out and talk with people, because I get this information from them, just like I said, and it helps me figure out where we can make that tweak so that we can overcome that reimbursement piece. I couldn't agree with you more. We've got a long way to go in it, but we're going to keep fighting.
Our next question is from Kurt from Clive. Please discuss your vote on the USMCA. Some people are concerned about its environmental impact or that it does not do enough to address environmental concerns. Can you address that?
Yes, thank you. Listen, we were not going to move this bill forward without addressing environmental concerns. And so I think the package that we came up with was good. I'm going to be honest, folks, there's no negotiation that's the perfect of everything. Would I like to see even more environmental regulations? Probably. But it's a really great step forward. And it does bring a lot of environmental regulations to Mexico that they have to adhere to that they weren't adhering to before. So, this is a bill that previously in NAFTA didn't have anything. I'm happy with where we got, and I think we could find room for improvement, but for the most part, the key environmentalists in the House all supported the USMCA. There was a few holdouts, but not very many. Most environmentalists think that what we got was a pretty darn good deal to help protect our environment, and I think that we were able to work forth a package that really worked for everybody. So I appreciate the fact that you're hoping we could get a little bit more. There's a lot of things, folks, that I hope we could just get a little bit more in when we're negotiating things like this. But you got to remember how big and broad they are, and you got to remember that sometimes we can't overlook good for great. So can we keep pushing for even better environmental protections and see how we could possibly work with Mexico in the future outside of this agreement? Absolutely, we can do that. But let's get this thing going. Let's give them some specific regulations they have to follow. We had to fight tooth and nail to get those. They did not want those. There was a ton of pushback. There were many times where we didn't think this was even going to be able to happen because of that. It was not literally, folks, until about, I would say, the last few days before we got the sign that we really felt that this was going to happen. It went back and forth so often, and there were times where it was truly off the table. So I think that we did a darn good job. I think Lighthizer is a good negotiator, and I certainly know that the folks who are part of our climate task force who deal with environmental issues in the House are pleased with that outcome. But we'll keep fighting to ensure that trade agreements moving forward can even push the agenda further. Thank you for that question. I know how important protecting our environment is, and we'll just keep making sure that it becomes a priority in any agreement that we've got moving forward as well.
Our next question is from Chris from Waukee. Do you support a Medicare for All plan, such as that proposed by Senator Bernie Sanders?
Chris, what I support is affordable quality health care for every single American. And since my start of my race in my primary, I've been supporting shoring up the Affordable Care Act and introducing a public option where anybody could buy into Medicare or Medicaid. I believe this is the fastest way to get everybody to the outcome that we need to get to. I'm more concerned about the outcome, folks, and not about the tool that it takes us to get there. The outcome we need is that every person should have access to quality care at a price that they can afford all across this country. We put a public option in place, allow people to buy into that. What we end up doing is forcing competition as well within the system. But we give people an option. Because you got to remember, the majority of people in this country still would like to have a choice with their insurance, okay? But we also know that insurance companies are, in many cases, strapping Americans. They're making way too much money. There shouldn't be this kind of profitability. And I'm sitting here in insurance town saying that. But they can't be walking away with double-digit profitability, 20-some% that they are right now, and think that nobody's going to call them out on that. It's unacceptable. They're a not-for-profit business. They should be serving Americans when it comes to health care. So I firmly believe that if we put a public option in place, it will force them to be much more efficient and effective with how they conduct their business so that they can lower their rates, force competition across the board, and everybody gets good coverage moving forward. And that's what I'm going to stick with.
Our next question is from Katie from Des Moines. What actions would you support in 2020 to move towards 100% clean energy?
Well, certainly the environmental bill that I just told you about earlier, the climate change bill that's being worked on. And then a recent bill that I'm a co-sponsor on that I'm really excited about is the National Climate Bank. So this establishes a bank, essentially, that will allow us for companies, new technologies, startups, entrepreneurs who are inventing things, who are putting pieces in place, new ways to protect our environment and to fight back against climate change, to have access to capital to actually get those things up and running. So we just passed that through the committee. We're going to hopefully get that signed into law. I think it's going to be a huge opportunity for this company. Half the battle is getting the opportunity for people who do have answers for a lot of these things to get the access to capital that they need so that they can put these pieces in place. So that's one thing that I'm going to heavily be supporting. I absolutely support moving us back into the Paris Climate Agreement. The fact that we pulled out of that it sends a horrible message to the world and does a lot of damage. So we need to get back into that. I would love to see us have, a carbon fee so that folks can actually, move forward in that direction as well. There's a lot that we need to be doing. If those bills come, as those bills are coming to the floor, and I think that they're right for Iowa, I'm going to get behind them. But I want to do everything I possibly can to address the issues of climate. I know it's one of the most important threats we're facing today. It's a national security threat. It's an international security threat. It's why we've seen wars in parts of the world because of a lack of water, because of climate change. And so we've absolutely got to get behind this. And I'll make sure that not only those bills address that issue, but provide opportunity for Iowans as well. So those are a few of the things that I'll be behind and that I'll be pushing for and continuing to work on this year.
Our next question is from Mike from West Des Moines. What can Congress do to prevent the hollowing out of the professional staffs of federal agencies, such as the USDA's Economic Research Service?
Oh, Mike, that's a good question. It's really devastating to see so many departments who really aren't living up to the mission that they were established to be there for. When we're seeing places like the EPA go against the very foundations of what they were put in place for, it's really disheartening. When we're seeing dollars taken away from important research that we need, while folks in this country are suffering with health issues that we need to be putting more effort behind solving, that's really disheartening. When Secretary DeVos continues to assault our public school system at the expense of children around our country and opportunities for families, it's really disappointing. I think we're at a point in our country where folks are wondering, what can congressional authority be for those types protections. Here's the problem wherein it lies. I spent a decade in state government. The reason that we've got 3 distinct branches is because we need to operate separately and have checks and balances. So it's very difficult for a legislative branch to go in and say this is how a executive branch department should be operating. And that's where we're going to have a little bit of struggle. But what I firmly believe is that if those departments are being supported by taxpayer dollars and they are supposed to implement federal policy, if they're doing the exact opposite of that, then they're violating what they are supposed to be doing, and that means Congress should be stepping in. I don't know what that looks like. It is a subject that I think needs to be taken up. I think it's something that I want to discuss with my colleagues in our End Corruption Caucus, because your taxpayer dollars and your expectations for what departments should be doing need to be lived up to. And if Congress needs to step in, even though some might look at that as you're overstepping your boundaries because you're a different branch, we have a responsibility, because our job is to ensure that your lives are improved. Our job is to ensure that we use your taxpayer dollars effectively and efficiently and make sure that we reach those outcomes that we crafted those policies for. And if we don't have departments that we can rely on to actually make that happen, then it is our job to step in. So this is something that I do want to take up this year, because I've consistently heard this over and over. And I can tell you, I spent a decade in state government. I never heard this once. Not even, even Republicans saying it about Democrats or Democrats saying it about Republicans. Because we've never seen, I don't think, a time in our history where we've seen so many departments actually pushing against the objective that they're supposed to try and achieve. So even in a very, in a country that's had both Republicans and Democrats forever, we've never seen this. And this is why this is coming to a head, because we've had that level of respect for what those departments need to do for previous years under both Democrats and Republicans. So I don't look at this as a partisan issue. I look at this as another one of those pieces where there's an opportunity for folks who might not have the best intentions to find pieces within the system that they can manipulate to their advantage, and that's a job that Congress needs to take care of then. And so I'm going to be taking this up because it's not right. We shouldn't have to fight for the things that those departments should be supporting, and I appreciate Mike, wherever you are, for bringing that up, because it is something that we've got to address. So thanks for that question.
The next question is from Cecil from West Des Moines. Recently, another shooting, this time in Seattle. We've had shootings in Des Moines area as well. What are your thoughts on eliminating these shootings and cleaning up the massive homeless population on the West Coast, just in case you have to vote on legislation dealing with this?
Folks, we need universal background checks and the assault weapons ban back on the books. End of story. I'm firmly in support of the Second Amendment. For goodness sake, I grew up in Iowa. My dad's side of the family is all hunters. I worked at the DNR. I oversaw hunting and fishing licensing. I know Iowa's history of gun ownership for sport and protection. So I'm not here, and I want to make this very clear, I'm never going to attack the Second Amendment. I support our Second Amendment. But what I support is families being able to exercise a reasonable lifestyle, and we're not seeing that anymore. When our parents are scared to send their kids off to school because they're afraid they might not come home, when you're afraid to go to church because you think there might be a shooting, when you're concerned about going to a concert because that's a great place to be able to shoot a heck of a lot of people, what kind of country are we living in? Those aren't questions that Americans should have to ask themselves. I want reasonable gun legislation put in place. Every piece of data shows that universal background checks are the most impactful way to get there. We had the president say he was willing to look at that last fall. And then the NRA and the lobbyists got to him. We had him where he said he knows this is an epidemic. So what we've got to do is make sure that we take money out of politics, because it's unfortunately ruining our opportunity to address the issues that we need to today, because too many people are beholden to big money. I don't take corporate PAC money. because we can't be in the pockets of organizations that want us to do something if it's not the right thing for our country. And that's on both sides, folks. So I'm sickened that we see this. I'm grateful to see that Iowa hasn't had any terrible school shootings, but you're just talking, in our neighborhoods, we're seeing this everywhere, and that's wrong as well. We have just shy of 100 people are dying every single day from gun violence. We've got to take care of this. Our children are accidentally shooting themselves because there's not good gun safety in homes. We've got a lot of things that we could be doing to save people in this country, including our children. And I believe starting with the universal background check, reinstating the assault weapons ban is the first place to start.
Jill from West Des Moines wanted to know about assault weapons, so I feel like we just covered that. You did it, thank you. And this is probably, we have time for one more question.
Okay.
And this is from Ben from West Des Moines. How do you reform the corrupting effect of massive corporate funds in our political system?
Ben. we start the End Corruption Caucus for one thing, that's for sure. And we ask other folks to be like-minded like us, to refuse corporate PAC money. But I'll be honest, that's nothing compared to the dark money in politics. We wrote laws earlier last year. The first law that we put out was H.R. 1, to give you guys an opportunity to help us in government be more effective for all of you by holding us accountable. It addressed three key things: voter integrity, so that we didn't suppress votes around this country, and we didn't gerrymander to keep people in office, that we let the voters actually decide who's going to represent them. That was the first thing we did. The second thing we did was to help bring ethics back to Congress through a series of policy that would limit certain things that elected officials could do. Two of my pieces of that were banning people from flying first class. I don't believe any taxpayer money should be going for any elected official to be sitting in first class. And by the way, folks, when I've gotten on the plane to go back to D.C., I've passed by state officials and federal officials sitting in first class. I think they can sit in the regular class with the rest of us folks. Yeah, that's right. And the second piece that I put in there was a lifetime ban on lobbying by legislators, because that's really important. So, that's what has to be done. The corruption comes because we've got too much money and too much external influence in Washington. We've got dark money behind the scenes that's coming in from we don't even know where, from other countries, people. These ads you're going to see for the presidential election, for my election, that I didn't put out or that my opponent didn't put out, they're coming from special interest groups who have dark money. And they don't have to tell us where that money even comes from. They don't have to put it on the ad. No, Americans don't need to know about it. We don't need to know if somebody in Russia is helping to pay for this. But this is the stuff that's happening. So we've got to get dark money out of politics, which is why we need to overturn Citizens United. I've been endorsed by End Citizens United. I will always stand up to taking money out of politics. I truly believe that the voters in this country understand who should be their elected officials, that we shouldn't have influence by outside forces, that we shouldn't have large corporations in the pockets of your people who are making decisions to better the lives of people here in this country, and we absolutely should never have interference from any foreign entity. And until we know that we'll all make sure that we fight for that. That's a tough battle, folks. When you're talking about changing, language, Supreme Court decisions, we're really going to have to figure out how this gets done, but we're going to keep moving against it. You're seeing with a lot of people who are running for office now that they've taken the End Citizens United pledge that they're refusing corporate PAC money. But as I said, that's just a start. Because quite honestly, the bigger investment's coming from that dark money, and that's what we really need to get to. Well, apparently we're all done with our time here. I want to thank you so much for coming out. I hope your questions questions got answered. If they didn't, please reach out to our office. We'd love to answer them for you. If you aren't familiar with our offices, we have one downtown in the East Village, as well as in Council Bluffs and in Creston. Katie Patchett is our district director. If you have any issues related to Social Security, related to work visas, related to scamming, anything, please give us a call. We'd love to work with you on that. Things move faster when it comes from a congressional office, I can tell you that. So let us know. We're here to serve your family. And the last note I'd say, if you decide to take a trip to Washington, we'd love to help you plan that, because we can get you into some museums that have long waits. We can take you on some very special tours and behind-the-scenes things. And if you've got kids or grandkids, 14 years or younger, I'd love to take them onto the floor. They get a vote. They love seeing the lights shine up when they press the button. And then I sometimes take them back to get them an ice cream. So we really like that. So please let us know if there's anything that we can do to serve you, including helping you plan your vacation. My job truly is to serve all of you. I did not get into this to put honorable in front of my name. I did not get into this for a lifetime. As a matter of fact, I believe in term limits. And so I want to make sure that I'm addressing the issues that you've got. So please reach out to us. We're trying to reach out to you, but we also need you to connect with us. So please find us on social media. I'm at Rep. Cindy Axne on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can go to our website and sign up for my email that we do on a monthly basis, and you get an update on what's happening out in Washington and things that are going on here in the district. So please sign up for that. We'd love to stay connected with you, and thanks for all you do for our community.